Check, check, 1, 2. Let's record a podcast. Hello and welcome to In the Pockets, the bass guitar podcast where we get the lowdown on the low end. My name's Jonny, a totally average bass player, and each week I'm joined by a different co-host to talk all about that bass. Well, I mean, normally I am, but this week it's just a solo one. Solo pod this week, just me, mainly because nobody wanted to come on the podcast. So this is it now, it's just me. No, that's not true. I just thought we haven't done a solo one for a while, so why not do one this week? Bit of admin before we jump into it. If you haven't already, make sure you've gone and entered my competition that I'm doing at the minute. Or I don't know if it's less of a competition. It's more like it's a community challenge, I suppose, where I'm getting you at home to help me reach 10,000 subscribers by building a bass with me. Now, listeners of this might already know of the premise of this, where I'm letting you guys decide what happens to this really cheap P-Bass copy that I've got, that I'm going to mod based on your suggestions and turn it into some wild Frankenstein bass that hopefully will serve someone very well, because every comment on any of the videos to do with that bass count as one entry towards winning it, which I will unveil on a live stream that I do once I hit 10,000 subscribers. At time of recording this right now, I believe I'm on 9,080. So, just under 1,000 to go. So I'm thinking it's going to be like a month or so before we get there, if nothing happens in the meantime. So yeah, make sure you have subscribed if you haven't already. Maybe you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and you haven't even watched me on YouTube at all. That's where all the good stuff is, honestly. Like this is the rubbish side bit, I think. No, I love doing this. It's good fun. Any other updates in my life? One other update is that my bass wall is looking very sad at the minute. There's not much going on there. I've got 2 jazz basses, a P bass, a Stingray, and then nothing else. Normally, I'm oversubscribed with basses, and right now is the first time in a long time that I've got room. So leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. Let me know what I should get next, because I want to get something cool hanging on that wall. Let us crack on with the podcast by going on to our first question. To ask questions on this very podcast, what you need to do is go and follow me on Instagram at Jonny Dibble, where 24 hours before I record a podcast each week, I put up a poll on there where you can submit your questions. So make sure you are following me to stay up to date and get involved. Like William Garcia has on Instagram, who says, tuners, headstock versus pedal versus something like a Boss TU 12C, hell, a pitchfork or a pitch pipe, if that floats your boat. So the question here is, which should you choose, or which would I choose, or just a bit of talk about tuners, because I love a tuner. Not the fish, I'm a vegetarian, but if you do not have a tuner, you should get a tuner. Let's just say that. Straight out the gate, because I was at a gig recently and they had a tuner, but it broke on stage. They had to keep swapping cables and have the dreaded boom 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 boom. Oh, that noise just haunts me. I absolutely hate that noise. So yeah, didn't enjoy that. So everybody should have a tuner, and a tuner that works, because you've got to have it and it works. Now, people seem to get very, very touchy when you mention headstock tuners versus pedal tuners. For me, it is a clear-cut answer because of the way that I do gigs and the way that I run my pedal board. The fact I even have a pedal board comes into it, because I want to have silent tuning on stage with the, not a flip of a switch, but the kick of a switch, that I can just put that stomp box on, and then I've got my LED screen there telling me if I'm in tune. Personally, I use the Korg Pitch Black Mini at the moment, and you know, I think it's a great tuner, really good for bass, as is the Polytune by TC Electronic, and of course the classic Boss chromatic tuner. Now, whenever I've mentioned this before, some people have been like, no, every professional gig that I've been to is using a headstock tuner. Now, I don't know what kind of gigs you're going to. I've never, ever seen anybody use one of those live on stage. It's just not professional looking. What, whip that thing on the headstock and, I don't know, turn your guitar down or whatever, and then tune? No, thank you. I'm a pedal all day. Now, for some people that don't have pedal boards, maybe just having a tuner is a pain in the bum, or having to power that, and it's, you know, what a nightmare, because some people like to go straight into the amp. And yeah, it might suit you better. And hell, there are cases where a headstock one will suit you better. Or like the Boss TU12C, which is just like a, you know, like a, not one that attaches to your headstock, but just one that you put near your bass. In fact, I don't know if you plug into that one or not. You can get some that you can plug into, or some that just do it based on sound. And those are, you know, I used to use when I was a kid in school and tuning in the practice rooms in secondary school, but never ever in like a live situation or even at home. My pedal board is always next to me on the floor, and so I plug straight into that and into my interface. That's where all the magic happens for any recording I want to do. Not with videos, but any other stuff, you know. I've got my dark glass stuff on there, blah 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 blah. So I've always got the tuner on there, so that's primarily where I tune from. So for me, it's 100% the pedal, and I don't think I'll ever have anything else. But yeah, each to their own, you know. Your situation might be different to mine, but yeah, pedal all day, baby. Let's move on to the next segment. Welcome to the news. This is where we talk about the latest bass guitar related news. First off, G&L. They have released a new series of basses. You might know the L2000. I reviewed the tribute one recently, and that is like their dual humbucker, super active electronics, all bells and whistles model. They've also got the L1000, which is the single pickup version, which is kind of in the middle of the two. And they have just released another version of the L1000 in the 750 basses. Now, what these are, they've kind of done, they did a similar thing a couple of months ago with the L2000, I think, where they are, quote, wide boys. They're wider bodied basses with chunkier necks, because the whole thing that's different about these basses is that they have a wider string spacing than your average 5-string. Of course, with a 5-string, your string spacing, so the neck isn't too humongous, is naturally a bit slimmer, which can present a bit of a learning curve sometimes. But these ones have got a 19.03. 0.03 is really making a lot of difference. Oh my god, can you hear that? Don't know if you can hear the ice cream van outside. Not sure if it's ice cream weather right now, but okay. 19.03 millimeter string spacing, which is pretty wide. It's just the same as Leo Fender's standard 4-string basses. So it's like essentially just like a 4-string, but with that 5th string added on. That might sound obvious, but it's still got that familiar feel, and it will have a slightly bigger neck, and you can see in pictures of it that the body is a bit wider as well. It's actually nicknamed the Wide Body 1K. What does that mean? What does that mean? I don't know. But yeah, in terms of tonality, I don't know what this adds, but I'd like to try one of these because honestly, I don't know if I find it better or worse. I find I'm not really a 5-string guy. I find that I often have to adjust a little bit to a 5-string whenever I've got it. So maybe that would just be a simpler step for me, but I don't know. Anyway, this one comes in sunburst with a rosewood fretboard and this like bright turquoise color with the rosewood, and then maple neck versions with black body and a natural body. They look pretty cool. I'd love to check one out, but they're like $2,070 starting, so not really aimed at me in my market. But pretty cool nonetheless. Thanks, GNL, for doing something cool and different. Speaking of cool and different, ? The only other bit of news this week, it's a pretty news slim week, is from Squire. Squire have just slid this one under the rug. I had to search for this one to find it because they've released the classic vibe jazz bass, the 60s one, in a new color. It now comes in Lake Placid blue. Now I reviewed the what's the blue version called? What is it called? Not Pelham blue. It is Daphne blue. That's it. They had the Daphne blue version. They've now released gosh, my words have just disappeared, haven't they? Wowee. Lake Placid blue version with, get this, block inlays. Yes, it looks so good, this thing. I absolutely love it. I'm a sucker for Lake Placid blue. My FGN jazz bass is like a ocean turquoise blue, but this one, yeah, it really, really looks tidy, especially with that like orange tinted neck that you've got on the classic vibes. I think it really suits it. One thing I wish they did do, though I do like it, I wish that it had a tortoiseshell pickguard on there. That would have really added to the vibe. And I think I've been listening to a lot of Blue Tiger recently, and her bass lines are just so good. And her bass is kind of similar to this, I think, with those block inlays and the blue jazz bass. If it had taut pickguard on there, it would be turning my head that even bit more. But that's such a simple change that you can do yourself. So yeah, if you're after that look on a budget, this might be the one. Now, what might not make it the one is that I'm just looking on Anderton's right now, and it's £450. Now, I know it's a limited edition, so that might bump the price up a little bit, but is this a sign that this is going to be the price point for Squire Indonesian-made models moving forward? I don't know. I thought that the 40th anniversary models were that price just because they are like big milestone editions and like special price points for those, but I thought this one would be under £400, to be honest. I don't think I don't know, have any of the others been this kind of price point? Anyway, I'm hoping it's not the direction we're going, but who knows? I want all the success for Squire. I want to see it flourish, of course, because it's only good for the consumer. But yeah, I don't know, £450 when there's bases like the Sires on the market. I don't know. It's getting a tall ask sometimes, and people have been complaining about the prices of the 40th anniversary ones, let alone a standard classic vibe one. So we will see. I want to see what their next release is just to see what the price point is, honestly. But yeah, that is it for the news. Like I said, it's a news light week this week. Hopefully we'll bring it in next time with loads of hot goss. Let's move on to our second question. This question comes from Calamord Music on Instagram, who has been not yet banned from listening to this channel and this podcast for his, he can't get into stingrays, this guy, and I've told him he's going to be banned, but I haven't brought myself to do it yet, and he slipped through the cracks this time with another fantastic question. God damn it, this guy. So Callum says, would you rather have one bass for everything or multiple basses covering specific things? Now, I thought this was really interesting because I have such an opinion on this. And mainly through my experience with this channel as well, and how my bass journey has changed throughout it as well, and what I kind of look for now is very different to what I used to look for. So when I, starting out, or when I was not sure what genre I was really playing at the time, or things like that, I wanted something that could cover all, pardon the pun, could cover all bases, because I didn't have much money, and I don't want to buy one thing and it's a one-trick pony and it's no good for something else when I need it to be. I need it to be super diverse and be able to bend and break to my demand, and be the sound that I need it to be. But now that I, have a bit more money and can afford to buy different basses or have a few basses, I have done a complete 180, and now I way prefer having specific basses for specific needs. Now, and that's just because I can have and that's not just an excuse to buy lots of different basses, which I love to do. But it's because I find that when a bass tries to do too much, it kind of does all of them okay, but it's kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none, where you're not really winning in any scenario. So I'd rather have something that's going to be really good at one thing, like a P bass, for instance. In fact, I think a great example is a bass with a PH configuration. I feel like the P bass pickup and the Music Man humbucker are like totally different sounding pickups, and like polar opposites almost. One's super mid-rangey, one's kind of more scooped sounding and way more high end, and that kind of different kinds of ways that they punch through the mix. And when you get a PH bass and you combine the pickups together, you just kind of get the sound that isn't so good. Or when you solo the P, it's not quite the same as a normal P bass. Or when you solo the humbucker, it's not quite that Stingray sound. I don't know. I mean, I would love Sterling or Music Man to do a version of the Cutlass and the and a Stingray together, a Cut Ray or something like that. a Stingless? No, that doesn't sound as good. Doesn't have that zing. Where it is the best of both worlds, but because I always find that everything does the P bass pickup okay, but then the Music Man humbucker doesn't sound as good. I don't know. Anyway, where am I going with this? They just never sound like the one or the other. It always sounds like this weird mix where it's a bit confused. And with the P bass, I feel like that has so much character in it that everything about that bass leans towards that sound, like the chunkier neck, and just the way that it feels and plays naturally makes you play and sound a certain way. And I think that you can't really translate that very well, like a really slim neck or like a Stingray style neck encourages you to play a different way, or a bass with like a really modern bass, that is meant for being fast. The neck feels completely different on like an Ibanez or something. So I don't know. It's this hard thing to explain, where if it's trying to be so many things in one, it kind of starts to lose character a bit. And I've said this time and time again about the P bass and things like that. But I just think that is one of the most important things to me now, for the bass to have a soul and to want. You got to want to pick it up and play, and it to inspire you to do something with it, or almost fight you back a little bit, but in a good way, that's not, so it's not unplayable, but it, kind of forces your hand a little bit. And that's what I really love about guitars, honestly. I think that's what's the most interesting about them, is how they can inspire you. And so yeah, I think that I definitely prefer having multiple ones to do specific things, because then they're all having that specific purpose. And that's taking away, this is just sound. This, it's not taking into account tunings, because then you've got different setup issues, or even number of strings, like, having a 5 string or a 4 string or a 2 string that exists out there somewhere. Yeah, that is definitely my answer to this question. There will be people out there that want something to be super diverse and that can do everything. But for me, I want something that has a specific purpose, because then it's going to do that one thing well. And, I'm saying that from a very privileged, background almost, because I can afford to do that. Some people can't, and they need it to do multiple things, and that's fine. But it can sometimes be trickier to find something that I think really nails all different elements, and can be super diverse. But that's not to say that you can't get great tones out of basses that try and do that. Like a Sire active jazz bass can actually sound like a lot of different basses, I think. But then you're getting into active preamps and millions of knobs and controls, and that kind of that's a whole other ballpark that takes things away from me. But yeah, that is the answer that I'm going to give to this question. Let's move on to the next segment. Now it is time for That Tone You Own. It is my favourite segment of the week because I get to shut up and listen to some bass. Normally I get my co-host to bring along their signature sound or just a tone that they're enjoying at the minute. But this week, of course, it's just me. So we're going to sit in silence. No. I have brought along a tone that I'm playing with at the moment. If you follow me on Instagram, you might have seen that I did a live unboxing of a little new bass that I have. And that is the Sterling by Music Man Ray34. I've been wanting to get my hands on one of these for so long, ever since I foolishly sold my Sterling Ray24 CA. I've had a big stingray-shaped hole in my life. And yeah, I've been really excited to get hold of this one. It's the all black one with the roasted maple neck, and yeah, super excited to finally get some stingray tones back in my life because I love a stingray. I'm going to shut up and let's just have a listen to this thing. I'm running straight into my pedal board, which is just running the Dark Glass Vintage Ultra. It's super transparent sounding. It's just a bit of an EQ at the minute, so I'll show you what it sounds like on and off. Then straight into the Line 6 HX Stomp with a Ampeg SVT amp sim on there. So here's what it sounds like. It's very stingray-y. It's very stingray-y. Now, this bass, I'll be honest, needs a bit of a setup. You can hear that the D, I'll play the strings, you can hear the G and the E, or which is tuned down to D, are way quieter than the other two. And that is just because of a bit of a setup change that I've made, and I need to change some things again. I'm actually getting a bit of noise as well through the bass, which it's a humbucker, shouldn't really get that. So I think there's a couple of dodgy bits going on with this one, but nothing that's a quick look under the hood and a bit of messing around can't fix. So that string example, we're going to go top to bottom into the strings. The volume difference is massive. So yeah, just a bit of a setup thing. That it's nothing that I'm too concerned about. But yeah, without the Dark Glass, it's like this. With it on, just adding a bit more girth and scooping a couple of high mids. It's a bit fret buzzy at the minute as well. So yeah, it's okay at the minute. It's not really in my total good books just yet, but we'll see. This is what it's like with the dark glass with a bit of drive. Now let's go with a bit on the HX Stomp. So yeah, it's not without its faults, this one, I don't think, but I haven't really had too much time to go under the hood and do a quick setup on this thing. So just a little taste of what it sounds like here before I do my full review, which will be coming out in sometime in the future. I did film an unboxing as well, but yeah, that little while before that one comes out. But yeah, just thought I'd let you lovely podcast listeners have a sneak preview of what this thing sounds like. Let's move on with the video. Now we're here at the big bass debate where, normally I just take a user's question and then turn it into a slightly extended debate. It's not really a debate. You need more people to do a debate. I guess this could be like a mass debate or something like that, with lots of people if I had enough people on here, but it's not. It's a solo debate. So can you do a solo mass debate? Mass debate. It's probably going to get demonetized for saying that. So maybe I should just edit in a big pause in between mass debate. Anyway, this week's big bass debate comes courtesy of John William on Instagram, who says, the point of having a big expensive amp on stage, it's rarely mic'd up, in brackets. So is there any point in having a big amp on stage at this point, No, not really, is my answer. There we go. That's the end. Big bass debate done. No. So obviously having a big amp on stage, you see some people with your big Ampeg SVT 8x10 fridges on stage, and some people have multiple of them on stage, either side of the drum kit or stacked on top of each other on their side, massive, massive rigs. And are they necessary anymore with modern technology? There will be naysayers out there that say, yeah, of course, there's nothing that compares to that Ampeg fridge sound or those big amp sounds. And yeah, okay, maybe recordings, you might be able to hear differences, or soloed, certainly you'd hear differences. Live, hell no, hell no. Live, there's just no need to have these big fridges on stage anymore, is there? Especially with things like the Quad Cortex and the Kemper, and even smaller amps. 9 times out of 10 now, basses are not being mic'd up on stage. So what is the point in having this massive speaker on stage? Now, having said that, of course, the purpose is for the player, not for the audience at the end of the day, because we're taking a DI signal half the time, whether it's out the back of the amp or a preamp pedal or whatever system is being run, and that's going straight to front of house, being blared through the speakers. It's not that big amp on stage making all that volume. It's coming out the DI, and then the sound guy's doing it all. So if we're not miking it up, is there point? It's for the player. Like I said, it's for the bass player on stage that wants to feel that rumble or feel the amp, feel something moving the air. And I get it. I totally get it. I like to have a live amp on stage. I have more than enough capabilities with the stuff that I have and the gear that I use to be able to have no amp on stage and run it completely through the PA. But I just don't like that just yet. I'm even I feel a bit stubborn, and I like to have that kind of sound and the to feel my presence coming at me from behind. And that's what people on big stages with these massive amps, like as well. And of course, the bigger the stage and the further away you are, the bigger kind of amp you're going to need for that kind of thing, I suppose. I saw a rig rundown recently, and I think it was Shawn Mendes' bass player. They strap this Aguilar cab underneath the stage to the bottom of the stage so that it rumbles, it vibrates the floor underneath. And I thought that was incredible. Like that's the kind of frequency, that's the response he wants, is to feel the air and feel the rumble of the bass. And it's coming up through the ground. I thought that was incredible. And it's that kind of example. That's what we want. We want something physically pushing the air at us. And, a lot of pro bands now are using in-ear systems as well, in-ear monitoring, so that they hear full mix straight into their ears. But of course, that doesn't give you that feeling or the low ends that you get. So really it's just there because it looks very, very cool, but then also so that you can feel it on stage. So trying to answer this question, got to remember the question first. That is the point of having those amps on stage. Can you do that with a smaller amp? Yeah, sure you can. And you can do it okay. I think it depends on the size of the stage. If you're, doing headlining Reading Festival, then yeah, you might want something there. But then at the same time, do you? I don't know. Really, when you get down to it, no, there isn't any point anymore. Hell, you could tour the rest of your life with no real amp ever again, with things like Kempers and Profilers and Quad Cortex, things like that. Even with my HX Stomp that I've got here from Line 6, I could do entire thing with just that, and you'd be fine. You could just take a straight out of it and straight front of house. They've got everything they need. They pump it through the PA. Bosh, done. But it's that thing, is it? It's what you prefer. Yeah, it's rarely mic'd up, says in the question, because that's just not what we do with bass guitar anymore, really. In the modern world, no one's doing that anymore. Of course, there will be people that are and say that is going to be the best way to do it, but in terms of ease of setup, like why on earth would you want to do that instead of just taking the DI out for the bass? Especially when the guy at front of house, he'll mic up the guitars and take that sound and then we'll mold the bass around that and to fill in the sound, to make it sound as big as possible. So that's kind of his role within that, rather than getting your sound out there. I don't know. It depends on the bass player and on the setup, really. But yeah, I don't think there's any point of having this big expensive amp on stage. It's just going to break your back in the long run. Honestly, if I was doing a big tour, I would not want that at all. I'd want something, small that's gonna work well, or that might give me a bit of stage volume, especially if, well, I suppose that's another thing, isn't it? Is if your in-ears go wrong, or if a monitor goes or something, then you've got something behind you still driving some sound at you, because if you're doing a big show, you might not be able to hear yourself all that well if those things cut out. But if you have got that amp behind you, then yeah, sure, you've got that pumping it out at you. But what you've got to remember is that it's for the bass player's benefit and no one else's. Probably going to get some kickback about that. People are going to say, I'm not getting rid of my Ampeg SVT. I want that thing up there. I don't know why they've gone proper Somerset now. Well, probably because I'm proper Somerset, but there we go. Anyway, I hope that answers the question. And that brings us to the end of the podcast. It's a sad time every time, and it goes way too quickly. I feel like I've spoken at like 1,000,000 miles an hour for this one, but that's probably because I want my tea. I haven't had my tea yet. Once again, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to go and enter that 10k giveaway. Leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening on here, whether that is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can leave me a 5-star rating. That'd be much appreciated. And make sure you've liked, commented and subscribed on the YouTubes, etc. And yeah, let me know what guests you want to see on here in the future, because I'm very slowly making my way through my list of people that I want to talk to on here. But of course, I want to hear more. There's people out there that I don't know about, so I'd love to broaden my horizons and speak to and learn from even more bass players out there. So yeah, drop us a comment down below. Let me know who should be on here as a co-host, because I think it'll be a fun time. Once again, everyone, thank you so much for listening. See you next time.